Man, I've never played a Final Fantasy in my life, but that Final Fantasy VII Remake looks hella clean. Welcome to a set breakdown, which for whatever reason is like E3 edition. I'm actually recording this before the Nintendo E3, but I'm probably uploading it after the Nintendo E3, so, my opinions and my thoughts will be like, from the past, I guess, but I'm not going to say too much about that, because today we're taking a look at the brand new latest set, which is the V-EB06, which has support for 4 relatively popular clans. We got Kagero, Royals, Link Joker, and Novas. We're going to take a look at everything. This is the set where they kind of like officially reintroduced SPs, instead of calling them like delete rares or whatever, or like just putting like a random name on them for no real reason, so that's that. Anyway, we're going to take a look at this set in detail. We're going to go from my least hyped to most hyped from the set, and so we'll break it down in order. So let's begin. We're gonna start off with Royal Paladin, which I think, like, honestly, I like Royals a lot, but it's just like as in terms of support in this set, it's really not that hot. Well, like, it's hot in premium, very hot in premium, but I think in standard, it's gonna need a little bit more to be a bit more than a cheese deck. So first off, here's a reprint of Blaster Blade in the beautiful IMR, so this time with Ibuki as the kind of, poster of Blaster Blade. Then we have our VR for Royals in this set, which is Messianic Lord Blaster. First skill is continuous during your turn. If you have 6 units with Blaster in their different card names, this unit gets the original power and crit of all your rearguards. So you already saw this in the anime. It gets powered up by everyone. If you got like a bunch of, if you have like grade 2s and 3s and a bunch of 1s, then he's gonna get massive power buffs and just gonna swing for huge numbers, but obviously no guard restrict. So even though he's swinging with 6 crit, if your opponent has a PG or a protect, that's gonna be pretty easy to defend against. But his art is beautiful though. And his second skill is when you drive check a blaster, you may call it to an open rearguard circle. I already complained about this in that the fact that he has to call to an open rearguard circle is pretty sad. If it could be called to an occupied circle, that'd be much better. Like, that would be so much better. And so this card kind of falls flat in my opinion. Like, I already have a whole video dedicated to this card, and actually another card from Royals in this set as well, on why I think it's not as good as it could have been. But I mean, the art looks good. It's great in premium because it has Blaster in its name and has Force and all these things, and it's still an alternative win con in a sense, if your opponent gets caught off. But card's okay, but honestly, it could have been much better. So next card is Arcsaber Dragon, another card that I have like a 10-minute video talking about. So he has 2 skills. He's also grade 4 with 14k power. Vanguard Circle and Hand Continuous. If you have a total of 3 or more cards with Blaster and their different card names on your Vanguard and Drop Zone, this card gets grade -1. So if you have, a Blaster grade 2 on your Vanguard Circle and 2 in your Drop Zone, then he is a grade 3 and you can ride him. And then when you do ride him, you may Counter Blast 3 and Soul Blast 3 and search for up to 1 card with Blaster in his card name from each from your deck, Drop Zone, Soul, and Damage Zone to a total of 3 or less cards. Call them to your guard circle and shuffle your deck. You do need 4 damage to be able to actually take something from Damage Zone, because you cannot take something face down. I covered this in a separate video. And so you basically, it's good. It's a +3, so that's definitely very nice, because you can deck search, you can revive from Drop Zone. Soul you probably don't want to, because that means you have to have an extra 4th soul, so you're probably going to take the last one from your Damage Zone. Whether you have, 4 damage on your first grade 3 ride or not, that's, it's pretty sad if you do. I think it's pretty, like, you've put yourself in a dangerous situation, and I think your opponent has to have crit you a lot in order for that to happen, but, that's just how the cookie crumbles. So I think the card could have been better. The cost is a bit too much, and, due to the ruling is pretty sad. So, also I just realized they didn't, like, even though they technically reintroduced SPs like with like Kagero and stuff in this set, they still call them origin rares. I think they don't actually officially call them SPs until the next set. That's my bad. But yeah, let's just go on. So next is Blaster Arrow. A lot of these blasters will have, IMR versions. They're all very beautiful. This one is the Korin one. So if you have 6 blasters on your field, then she cannot be, all of your blasters cannot be chosen by opponent's effects. They can still be attacked and, just attacked basically, but they cannot be chosen, so that's something. Then rearguard circle, when you call it, if you have 3 or more units with Blaster in their different card names, you can discard a card to search for an Arcsaver, which is like pretty good actually, because it's either a right target in standard, it's basically a stride fodder searcher in premium, which I think makes this card pretty good too. So you can literally call this down and then search for a stride fodder, and that's it, by dropping whatever you don't need in your hand. So she's pretty okay. I think like it's costless. It doesn't cost Counter Blast or Soul Blast, it just costs a discard, which depends on your build whether that costs a lot or not. And the kind of like pseudo resist skill is also pretty sexy. Then Blaster Rapier, this is the Misaki one. So if you have 6 units with Blaster, then everyone gets, oh no, only she gets plus 15k. Sorry, I kind of like skipped forward. So only she gets 15k, so she's a 25k attacker, which is pretty good. Then when she attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard with Blaster or Arc Saber in its card name, you can look at the top card of your deck and put it on top or bottom. So kind of bringing in that OTT skill into Royals. Also pretty good in both formats. I think like this is one of the better Blaster supporting cards because, you know, it's being able to check your top deck, you know, whenever she attacks is pretty good. I think like even, you know, in Premium this is easy to accomplish because you have a Blaster Vanguard. You know, in Standard it's easy to accomplish because usually you'll have Blaster or Arc Saber Vanguard, so pretty nice for that reason. Then we have Blaster Javelin, the Naoki one. So when it boosts, if you have a Blaster Arc Saber in its card name, gets plus 2k, so 10k booster. Again, both formats. Then when it boosts, if you have 6 blasters in different card names, you can bind one of your opponent's front row rear guards. So bringing in the Narukami aspect into the clan, also a good card. Honestly, it's a blaster with an 8k, which again in Premium is always a good thing. And on top of that, you know, it's a free, actually a free bind, literally costless. You just have to have, you know, the requirement of having 6 blasters, which, I mean, this deck can accomplish, especially in Premium. It can accomplish it pretty easily, so I think it's definitely a cool skill. Then finally, we have Blaster Dagger. This time it's the Shingo one. So if you have 6 blasters with different card names, they all get boost. So this is the one that all gives it the skill to everyone. So everyone gets boost, which is nice. You can boost with your Messianic Lord Blaster, I guess. And then Rearguard Circle, when the attack of your Vanguard with Blaster or Arc Saber in its card name hits a Vanguard, you can bounce it back to hand. Thus, it gives you kind of a defensive option. You know, it's kind of like Rebecca in Neo Nectar, except, you know, this time you do have to hit, and it has to be your Vanguard that hits. So it's a little bit sad in that sense, but I mean, it can still go off pretty well, especially in early games. So pretty interesting card. You know, you can kind of like damage deny your opponent with this as well. Like if they don't take it, then you know, they don't get damaged, but if they do take it, then you get a bounce. But I mean, it's not really something to damage deny them for. It's just a thing I'm mentioning. Then we have Taintless Feather Dragon. We don't have that many cards actually. Each clan got about like 10-ish cards in this set, or like 10-ish cards worth talking about without reprints. So this dude is Vanguard Rearguard when placed. You can make counterblast 1 if you do. Choose a column, call 2 cards from your hand to that column's rearguard circles, and he gets plus 5k until end of turn. If you call 2, draw a card. So it's interesting, you counterblast 1 just to call from your hand and draw 1. I don't think it's worth giving up your grade 3, like, you know, it's not worth giving up your grade 3 just for this. The when placed would be nice if it was like a blaster or something, because then it's like, well, you could run this in Premium right into something, call 2 from hand that you're going to call anyway, and then, you know, get an extra card in hand. But otherwise, nah, not really. Rotary Sage Belk gives 5k and shield and power to all of your Tarnas on rear and Guardian circles. I guess in like Premium, if you're running like Alfred, not blasters, but just like Alfred still, you could run this just so that all those Tarnas that you used to like deck search actually get a bit more of a buff or a defensive buff. That's the only real reason I could see you playing it, because the actual Tarna that we just got, it literally does the same thing. It gives your Belks the plus 5k shield and power. So really, literally not that useful and not worth playing. And then the final royal card is Refreshing Knight Gruhil. When placed, if you have 5 rear guards, you need Soul Blast 2 to draw 1. This is actually okay. Soul is a little bit scarce in Standard. I mean, even in Premium, I don't really know whether it's that scarce or not. Because I guess technically you are putting some stuff to Soul, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, I think this is a bit more... It's literally like... It's not a Pakgal, because that countercharges, but it's like, it's a Luck Bird, but it's 8k, and the condition is pretty easy to accomplish, I think, especially in late game. So definitely not a 4 of, but like a 2 of, or a 1 of, or maybe even a 3's pushing it. I think 2 of. In some decks, this could be quite nice. So, pretty good for a common slot, honestly. So, that's going to wrap it up for the Royal support. It's pretty balanced. It's quite okay. It has a cool gimmick, but it's going to need a little bit more to push it through. And I think, I mean, seeing that Ganslot is the poster child of VBT05, I think the deck's going to go in a different direction, because Ganslot is not going to be a blaster. It's already confirmed that he's going to be the Solitary Knight. So, we'll see where the deck goes. It's probably just going back to what it used to be, you know, running K's, Bedivere, Alfreds, etc. And so it's not going to be playing with blasters, and this was just kind of like a fun deck on the side, kind of like Brant is for this set too. Speaking of Brant, let's take a look at the Link Joker support in this set, and it's overall pretty nice. I'll talk about Brant in detail when we get to him. First of all, we have a reprint of the PG, but only in like reprint SP, so it's like, it's a reprint, but it's only if you want to bling it out, so it doesn't actually like affect the PG's price in the secondary market, which is just rising and rising because, you know, the Messiah hype is real. So there's that. But now let's take a look at Brant. I guess I'll take a look at the Grade 3 first for once. So we're going to take a look at the triple rare before the VR. So Grade 3 is the Wandering Starhulk Ruler Brant. His art, the original art, is so good. I really like this new art. It looks so cool, and just like, I don't know, it's got this really nice vibe going to it. The colors are super vibrant, and it just like the foiling brings it out even better. So he has an act, Vanguard Circle. You may count +1, soul +1 until end of your opponent's turn. For your opponent's trigger effects, other than the power increase, change the effects to crit. Your Vanguard gets -1 crit until end of battle, and heal, deal 1 damage to your Vanguard. So the Grade 3 only affects 2 trigger types. So it doesn't change the draws, and it doesn't change the fronts, and I guess it doesn't change the stands as the old Brant did. And so it's okay. I just think like a lot of people run this now, or trying to run this now as a backup Grade 3 for Messiahs. I think +1, soul +1 for a potential nothing happens is really steep, and I think that's why it kind of takes away from this deck. I know the deck like topped once or twice somewhere, but I just think it's not very worth the cost. I think you have better things to sink your resources into, and that's kind of the problem. But I think as a gimmick, the deck is pretty cool, but it needs more support. Like, it needs cards where it literally like lets you stack triggers on top of your opponent's deck, so that you surefire certainly get this effect off. Otherwise, it's a little bit inconsistent, I think. Then we have the Grade 4, the VR, Wandering Starhulk Deity Brant Ringer. So he has an act, you may count +1, so it's a lesser cost, but it's a Grade 4 with 14k power. Until end of your opponent's turn, for your opponent's trigger effects, other than the power increase, change the effects to your Vanguard gets -1 crit for a crit, you deal 1 damage to your Vanguard for a heal, you discard a card for a draw, and change the power increase to front triggers to the back row. So, kind of interesting, it's like instead of buffing the front row with fronts, it actually buffs the back row, so it still buffs. So it's like, I mean, if you're setting up a big fat back row, then it's like, yeah, okay, but it doesn't actually do anything to your axle circles, which is the whole point of fronts, I guess. So it's interesting, actually. But, I mean, it's a better skill. Like, already, you're paying less of a cost, you have more triggers that you're targeting. This time, like, if your opponent gets a draw, they have to discard. If they get a front, they lose out on the power, like, to an extent. And so, it's better, but it's still, like, this is all you're doing. Like, both brands don't actually plus you anything. They don't actually give you any confirmed advantage. It's all just like speculative. So it's like, will your opponent get triggers? I mean, there's a third, like literally in a deck of 50 cards, you've got about a third chance, you know, to actually see triggers. In, you know, every 3 checks basically, you're bound to see a trigger. So if you deal a damage and then they do their drive check, you know, theoretically, you know, depending on the game stat obviously, but theoretically speaking, yes, this should go off once. But you know, every game is different, every shuffle is different, and that's like, how you cut your opponent's deck is going to be different, and so that's going to change whether this skill goes off or not. I mean, if you've based your entire deck, then sure, it's going to go off sometimes, but it's like, is it worth to dedicate a whole deck to it? At the moment, maybe, but once Messiahs come out, definitely not. So that's just how I feel about the Brants on their own. So let's take a look at some of the supporting cards that don't really support Brant on its own. It just kind of adds to this like mind gaming mechanic, even though Brant itself isn't mind gaming. It's just like, well, if you get lucky, you didn't actually get lucky. So White Outer Vect. Vect is definitely a very good Grade 2. End of the battle, he attacked the Vanguard. If your opponent didn't guard with a trigger, then you may count +1 to draw 1 and bind when your opponent's Grade 2 or greater rear guards, and bind it face down, of course. So pretty good card. For count +1, you essentially +2. I mean, if you consider removing your opponent's unit as a plus to yourself, then it is a +2. Otherwise, even drawing a card, it is nice. It does depend on this kind of like mind gaming mechanic, so it's like, it's kind of nice because you can attack with him just like boosted for an 18, which would normally be like a 10k guard, and then, you know, they would normally guard with just a normal unit, or, you know, or intercept or something. But if they don't, like, guard with a trigger, then you get to do the skill, which is pretty nice, but it is a mind gaming mechanic in that sense. So then we have one of our Star Hulks, which is Letaluk. So when your drive check reveals a card with Star Hulk in its name, he gets +10k until end of turn. Not once per turn, so if you drive check 2, he does get +20k, which is pretty pretty nice. Then his second skill is when he intercepts. If your Vanguard is a Star Hulk, you can look at the top card of your opponent's deck, and then you may bind it. So it's interesting because it says like you may bind it, right? But it's like if you're intercepting and you're really looking at their top card, no matter what it is, like unless it's literally like a trigger and you already put up Brand's skill, then it's okay. Like you want to leave it there, but like okay, you know, you left it there and your opponent's gonna get like, you know, destroyed or like nuked by that effect. But it's like, you know, it's kind of interesting because even then, like depending on which state of the game this is, like if your opponent attack with their Vanguard and you intercept with this and then you see a trigger, like yes, you'll be able to still do it during their drive check. But it's like, if it's at the end of a battle, like obviously it'd be kind of stupid to do that, but it's like, if it's the last battle after drive checks and you see a trigger, then it's like, okay, even if you use Brand's skill next turn, they can guard everything and just draw that trigger to not get the effect of Brand. So it can be kind of played around, but you have to be kind of, you know, you don't want to be intercepting with this in the last battle. It's got to be like the first one, or during the Vanguard attack, or something like that. So you have to think about it. It's an interesting card, but it's just like, I just mentioned some of my thoughts around it. Then we have Decadal Automata. This card is cool. It's a Cyber Golem. It looks really clean. So Rearguard Circle continuous. He gets plus 10k, and your opponent's Vanguard gets an extra drive. So interesting. It lets your opponent plus essentially, and this isn't like once per, like hard once per turn or something. It's like if you call 5, no, you can't call 5. If you call 4 of these, your opponent does get plus 4 drive checks, but what it says then is that trigger units that are revealed for the third drive check or more of each turn are put into the drop zone instead of being put into hand, but the trigger effect still activates. So this is meant to kind of go well with Brand, where like you give your opponent a bunch of drive checks and then you make them like, you know, get minused by those drive checks. So it's an option, but it's like if they drive check a grade 3, grade 2, grade 1, it goes into their hand. They're literally plussing, and a lot of decks will easily take that. It's like, oh, you give me a rewrite target. Oh, you give me my amazing grade 1 or my grade 2. And it's like, do you really want to be giving that to your opponent? Are you really gonna like make sure you can win next turn with all those cards in your opponent's hand? I don't know about that. So, and it still lets them take their first 2 trigger drive checks anyway, so it's like, yeah, I don't know about this guy. I know some people do like him a lot, but I'm personally very skeptical. Next is Black Light Whip Flick Hitter. Rearguard Circle once per turn, when the trigger unit is placed in your opponent's Guardian Circle, when your other unit attacked, you may Soul Blast 1 and he gets plus 10k. So again, this kind of mind gaming aspect, it's like if they guard with the trigger, then you Soul Blast 1 and he gets plus 10k. So this is during the whole turn, so it's pretty good that like if they guard against anything with the trigger, you can use the skill, and it's not like, you know, it's a restand or something where you have to time it specifically. Gaining plus 10k power is always going to be nice unless you're attacking with him first, which normally you're probably not going to do. Only thing that's sad is that like it's not during the battle that he attacked, it specifically says other units, so it's not like him or other units. So kind of sad about that, but otherwise it's pretty nice. Another Star Hulk, this time is Chiral. Rearguard Circle when placed, you may count last 1, look at the top 4, put up to 1 grade 2 or higher Star Hulk in its name from among them into your hand, put the rest into your drop zone. So this is kind of nice. It's grade 2 or greater, so you can search out your brands. You can also search out your grade 4 brand as well, which is very nice. And so I think for that reason, it's actually a pretty solid card. It's a grade 1. Counterblast 1 is okay to use for a +1, and you know, being able to find a grade 2 or higher is a pretty high chance as well, so I think it's actually pretty good for that reason. That being said, there's actually only one grade 2 Starhawk, which is the double rare, the Let Look, so I was just like checking if we have any more, but it's literally just that one, a grade 3, a grade 4, and then like the grade 1s don't even count for his effect, so it's literally 3 different cards, so not the highest chance, but I think it's still a worthy trade-off. Then we have Starhulk Gickers. This guy interacts with the starter, so you have to run the Starhulk starter. So when an attack doesn't hit, you make an +1, move him to an open rearguard circle, from Guardian Circle that is. So if you guard with him, and you successfully guard, you make an +1, put him to an open rearguard circle, so that way it doesn't go to drop zone, and you actually, like, I guess it's count +1 to, like, you know, break even, not necessarily -1, I guess, but so that's kind of interesting. And you know, on a grade 1, that's a pretty nice skill. This wouldn't be as good on a grade 2, I think. Then his second skill is an act. You may Soul Blast your starter, look at the top card of your opponent's deck, and you may bind it. So again, tries to set up for Brandt in a very weird way. I think instead of doing this, it's like you could have just let them, like, oh, like, take a trigger from your opponent's drop zone and put it on top of their deck, and then, like, bind a random rearguard or something if you really do want to bind. Because I feel like it's okay, but it's still very luck reliant, you know? It's like, okay, you don't find a trigger, you bind it. What if the next card is still not a trigger? And it's like, would you really Soul Blast your starter? This skill literally can go off once per game. That's really sad. Like, you literally have to specifically Soul Blast your starter, and if you don't, like, if you don't want to bind it, then you literally, like, you Soul Blasted it for nothing, and you cannot do the skill again. It's really sad in that aspect, I think, and so it's a bit unfortunate. Last few cards, we have Treasured Child of Nuclear Magnetic Resonance. She's one of the better ones, I think, especially for common. End of the battle is she boosted. If your opponent didn't guard with any triggers for that battle, you may put it into your soul, and one of your units gets plus 10k. This will be very important in Messiah, as I already talked about, because there's an extra card in soul. It can give a 10k to one of our units. It's good on the Vanguard too, and so overall, just a very good card, free, and got a bit of a mind gaming aspect. Then we have Jet Shaft. When he boosts, you may Soul Blast 1 until the end of that battle. Your opponent must intercept if possible. Very cool skill. Kind of counteracts melodies a little bit because, you know, you force them to intercept with their grade 3s, like even against the battle where they don't need to, like, they don't need that like 20k intercept or something. So I think it's pretty good for that reason, and so it's all obviously pretty nice. I think it's also a nice counter for like if Murakumo comes back, they usually have a huge front row with, like, you know, grade 2s and whatnot, so you force all of those to intercept. It's kind of like an interesting way to just say, like, oh, like, retire a bunch of stuff, you know. It's like, oh, retire every grade 2, or like retire every unit with the intercept skill, you know. It's basically just like, oh, let me make you overcommit for this one battle. And so I like him quite a lot. People in Messiahs have been playing him. I think in most Link Joker decks since he released, he's been played at least as some copies or no copies, like depending on the opponent's, like, I mean, depending on the player's playstyle. But honestly, I think he's a pretty solid card. Final Link Joker card is the Sharpened Loop of Despondency Anilam. At the end of the battle, he boosted a Vanguard, or she rather, sorry. So if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or higher, and 2 or more Guardians were retired for that battle, you can retire her to draw 2. So pretty good card, I think. Has to boost a Vanguard, which is a little bit sad, but at least it's not like, it doesn't have to hit, but it's like your opponent must have guarded with 2 or more Guardians for that battle, which means, like, if you have a Battle Door effect, then that's super good, because with a Battle Door effect, then they'll definitely guard with 2 Guardians, and then you'll be able to retire her to draw 2, which is a pretty nice trade. So her art is also really good, but honestly, just really solid card. And honestly, the Link Joker support is nice. I think Brant isn't enough yet to really push the deck forward, but they got some really nice cards that they can splash into other Link Joker decks, and once Messiah is released next month, that's going to be super, super good. So definitely nice Link Joker support, but again, not enough to make it tier 1, but it will definitely become very soon. Oh my god, so part 2 of the Direct, part 2 of the set breakdown is post Nintendo Direct. Oh my god, dude, this new Fire Emblem, what is happening? Astral Chain, Breath of the Wild 2, ooh, this is so much. I need to get back to talking about card games, even though right now I just, ooh, oh my god, this is gonna be wild. Banjo-Kazooie, Dragon Quest guy, oh my god, I was gonna try Dragon Quest for the first time in September when it comes out on the Switch, but I was not ready for this. God damn. Okay. Speaking of dragons and quests, let's go on a quest to discuss the poster dragon of the Vanguard franchise, which is going to be his newest form, which is Dragonic Overlord the Great. So this is the card that is by far most expensive in the set. It's, you know, people underestimated at first how expensive it would be, but this is a really good card. Like, I tested it for like legit 3 games and I was like, damn, this thing's going to be expensive, because he's just a really good card, and like in a format like Standard, it's going to be even better. So just really, really good. So let me tell you why it's good. So first off, Vanguard Circle, when you ride him, you can call it Neoflame from your drop zone to Rearguard Circle. Has to be specifically Dragonic Neoflame, cannot be the old one, because that one is a Purgatory Dragon, so that doesn't work. So these ones lost the Purgatory Dragon name. They are just, you know, Dragonic Overlord the Great and Neoflame. So his second skill, which is the reason why he's so good. Oh no, actually I should talk about the first skill first. Like, it's already nice because it's an on-ride, so in premium you'll be able to fetch out stuff, but it's basically like you can guard with your Neoflames and then still call it out, and it's just a free plus, and that's really, really nice for that reason. So it's already a good start. Second skill is once per turn Vanguard Circle. At the end of battle he attacked. If you have a grade 3 in your soul, you may count on +1 and discard 2. Then you stand him and one of your Neoflames, and they get drive -1 until end of turn. So you basically get to restand your Vanguard and the Rearguard, and that is very, very cool. It's kind of funny that they say they get drive -1, so it's like literally like almost saying as if it was a Legion, or like as if the grade 2 could have drive check. Maybe that, you know, alludes to potential like a skilling Kagero in the future that will give drive checks to your rear guards, in which case you don't want to give it to Neoflame. But it's honestly a very good skill because the cost isn't that great. It's actually the same, not great, but the cost is actually the same as the original V-Series Overlord, in that it's like Counterblast 1, discard 2 to restand, but it's because you restand 2 units that makes it so good. So it's like 2 units, even if you lose the drive check, the fact that you're restanding 2 is really good because like it's a lot more than just having just the Dragonic Overlord restand. So it's very important for that reason, and I think it is a very nice card. To accompany him, we're going to skip ahead immediately to the double rares and look at Neoflame. So his skill is, when you're the Great attacks until end of that battle, he gets plus 5k, and then you make Counterblast 2 and give the Great a extra crit as well. So the plus 5k giving to the Great is free, so you don't need to worry about that, which is really nice. It'll be like a 28k attacker with just 1 force, which is very, very good. And so if you do have a lot of spare Counterblast, which I mean you do have Airmo, like the best countercharger in the format, then I mean you could do the crit skill, but it's only for that battle, so it's not even that good. If it was for the turn, then I could see it, but because it's only for that battle, I don't think it's really worth it. But that plus 5k is definitely very nice. So that's just to quickly look at Neoflame. It's a good card. Then we have Dragon Full Armored Buster, one of the, well, Origin rares slash SPs, I guess. Literally the first SP, really. I mean, apart from, like, Delete rares, I guess. So his skill is, first, if your opponent has no rear guards, he gets plus 3k, also on your opponent's turn, so Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill. And then he has another Vanguard Rearguard Circle skill. When in place, you may Soul Blast 2, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it, then look at the top 7 to search for an Overlord, put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. Good skill. Soul Blast 2 is a little bit heavy because we don't soul charge that much actually right now. So I mean, I guess unless you run the spillover, if anything, there's quite a few things soul blasting as well. So I think, you know, in that case, I think a lot of people play this guy as like a 2 of, because you really realistically only get the skill off like once. And I mean, it's nice, it's a retire and a potential +1, but if you whiff it, then I mean, it's not even that big of a deal because you soul blast a 2 to retire something, so it's okay. But it is a very nice skill, and it's the same as Berserk. Like, if you don't have anything to retire, you can still use the skill to look at the top 7, but I mean, that is a steep cost just to look at the top 7, so not sure if it's worth it in that instance, but it's still a very nice card, so definitely worth being run. Then we have Budget, Aldi, or Little, whichever you prefer, Airmo. So this is Sable Dragonute. Vanguard Circle, when its attack hits, you may draw a card. So it's the same as the grade 1 that Narukami got, but that one was a rare. Then his second skill is Rearguard Circle. When your opponent's rearguard is retired during your turn, you may retire him to draw a card. So literally like Little or like Aldi Airmo, instead of the counter charge, it literally just gives you the draw. It's still nice. I mean, it's still a good card. Helps you fish for your pieces, helps you fish for the grades, like for any kind of piece you would need. So played in decks, you know, as a 4 of or as a 3 of in some decks, you know, it might change over time because we have another Kagero set, you know, upon us just next month. So that might change over time, but right now he's definitely a very good card. A little bit pricey for a triple rare. He goes for about like 9 to 10 bucks, so pretty pricey, but still a very good card. Now we get into the kind of like rares and below. So we have Fire Rage Dragon, Vanguard Circle and Rearguard Circle. When placed, you make an +1, Soul +1, and mill the top card of your deck. Then choose the same number of your opponent's rearguards as the grade of that card and retire them. And if you didn't retire any, then he gets a crit instead. So if you mill a grade 0, gets a crit. If you mill a 1, 2, 3, then you retire 1, 2, or 3. He's okay. I could see some people maybe play him in like waterfall decks where it's like you can have a bit of like, because like right now the way that waterfall was until now was like going to Overlord, you know, potentially not do anything if your opponent like doesn't let it hit, or even if you hit, maybe not even do anything. So with this, you could potentially have a pretty nice play that like lets you pop off some stuff from the field for a pretty cheap cost, I would say. And then on top of that, like, oh, if you didn't, then at least you have a crit. Like, you know, you're still swinging for big numbers. You're still Kagero. You still have force and everything. So I think it's actually not bad. I think it's actually pretty interesting grade 3. Might see some play in, what, like I said, waterfall decks. And I think waterfall won't go away either. Like, the meta will definitely prefer Overlord just because he's a lot more popular. But I think for some people, like, waterfall will still be a potential pick for Kagero decks because you still got a lot of cool new pieces. So it doesn't necessarily, like, take away from the clan itself. So I think this can definitely be seen in waterfall. And also the upcoming Blade Master. But Blade Master will get its own grade 3s next set, so we'll talk about that when it comes. Then we have Dragonic Burnout. Act Rearguard Circle once per turn. You may count +1 and put a grade 2 or greater from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and then retire one of your opponent's rearguards. Nice skill. I feel like it kind of, you know, it does the same, very similar thing to what it used to. It is an act, which is, I mean, it's okay. Like, it's good in both formats again. It's a 10k, which is gonna be nice and premium too. But I think what's appreciated is that it's a recycler. It's a grade 2 or higher, but I mean, you can still recycle, like, you know, a waterfall, let's say, or like if you healed it away or something, you can recycle Year of the Grade if you want to rewrite it. You can recycle a lot of stuff. And I mean, if you recycle Overlords, you can then search it out with the full armor Buster. So I think for that reason, this makes this card pretty good. And even then, Counterblast 1 to retire something is pretty fair too. It's literally retire anything. Doesn't have to be front row, back row, literally anything. So definitely good for that. Then we have Wyvern Strike, Gajul Bird. When your other Flame Dragon is ridden or called, he gets plus 5k. Not once per turn, so could potentially be beefy, but other than that, not really worth to talk about. He's not even a Flame Dragon himself, which is like, okay. Then we have Dragon Knight Waleed. When placed, if your opponent has 3 or less rear guards, this unit and all units in the same column get plus 3k until end of turn. Kind of okay. I've seen a couple of like casual games on YouTube with like Japanese YouTubers use this guy, but I don't think he's all that relevant in my opinion. So I think he's okay, but you have a lot of good grade 1s to be running, so definitely not enough space for him. But there is one grade 1 that you could run as 1 or 2 of, which is the new Kimnara. So act rearguard circle, you make almost 1 and retire her. Choose 3 of your opponent's rearguards and retire all of your opponent's other rearguards. So this is going to be really clutch for the Axel matchup, because if you're playing against, let's say, like, I don't know, Murakumo or Azel, and they have like 3 or 4 Axel circles, or I guess more realistically Nova Grappler in this meta. So, you know, you can choose like their 3 Axel circles or something, and then they have to nuke their entire full field apart from that. So it's pretty good. It's usually going to be like, if the Counterblast 1 retire it to like trade for like 4 or something. So I think it's pretty good for that. I mean, you wouldn't use it against other clans. That's why it's kind of like a meta call. If it's a very hard Axel meta, then you definitely want to use her. But if it's like a force meta, kind of one we have now with like Overlord and then Bermuda, and then we'll probably have like Messiah next set, and then we'll have Novas. So it's like, well, Novas will be important, but it's not like the deck to beat, you know, it's still Bermudas. So definitely a good card, but will depend on how often it's used. Finally, we have Calamity Tower Wyvern. This card, it makes me happy because it's literally just whole waterfall support. So act, cost, you may Soul Blast 1 and retire him. One of your Vanguards gets plus 15k until end of turn. So right into Waterfall, make him absolutely huge with this guy, and then you've got yourself like an unstoppable, basically, unit. So I think this guy is basically Waterfall support, and I think he's a pretty good Waterfall support. It's a shame that he, like, you know, I mean, it makes sense that he retires himself. He wouldn't like Soul Blast 1 and then go into the Soul. I mean, that's kind of stupid. And you wouldn't want him to be like Counterblast 1 and put him into the Soul either, because that's also like too steep of a cost for a plus 15k. So I think Counterblast 1, I mean, Soul Blast 1 and retire him is pretty balanced, and so I think that makes him pretty good. So that's it for Kagero. Kagero did get a lot of really good really good support from this set. Sorry, I can't speak properly because the E3 hype is still within me. So it's like, I think Kagero got good stuff. I think they're going to be relevant for quite a while. The End comes out next set, and that's going to be a completely different build in my opinion. I think the Great and the End need to be built separately. I feel like they're not the same deck, and I think the Great has shown already in results that it's going to actually be more prominent than the End, which is quite interesting. So if you've been on the fence whether you want to pick up the Great or not, I definitely recommend you to pick it up because it's going to be really, really good. So moving on. And we're finally here at the final stop of this train. So we're taking a look at Nova Grappler, which is really the start of where they started to become a dominating force. So a lot of the support that they got in this set is really good. It's like the foundation of what's going to make them super good next set. And so let's just get into it. So first card we have is Beast Deity Azure Dragon. So Beast Deities are back, and with their main man, Azure Dragon. Sadly, no Ethics Buster just yet, maybe in the next Nova Grappler wave if they don't just jump to like Blouse or something, but I think Azure and Illuminal are a great way to like look at it already. But anyway, his skill is, when you ride him, you may Counterblast 1 to draw 1, call a card from your hand, and attack your opponent's Vanguard with that unit. If that attack didn't hit, at the end of the battle, stand him. So that's really good because that's a ride phase attack. So you ride him, draw 1, call it, attack with it in ride phase. If it hits, I mean, you did a damage. If it doesn't, then it stands. And if it does and they get a damage trigger, you can still call stuff in your main phase to adapt to it, which is really, really cool. So I like that a lot. So really good skill already. I think it's the main use of him, honestly, because like it's just really good going first as well. Like, it's super aggressive and it lets you push super hard, and so I think it's very good. It does restrict you to attacking your opponent's Vanguard, not anything else, but I think that makes good sense. His second skill is kind of what lets you still use him after riding him, which is when he attacks, you may count also stand one of your rear guards. So literally just attacking to give you an extra attack. Very nice. Like, I feel like this card is very ideal. Doesn't give any extra power, but that's what Illuminal is for next set. Honestly, the 3 cards that we get in the next set, which is like Illuminal, Grants, and Kick, will make this deck insane. But like, this already is a really good start. We don't have the power yet, but we do have the attacks, and we do have a very cool new direction. Then, like, Novas get their literally the first card, like from the very first set and the first original Vanguard set, when Novas were like initially supported, they had Claydol Mechanic, who was their like first countercharger, and he was always the countercharger. Like, they literally had countercharge from day one, and it took a while for them to reprint him in standard, but he has a nice other skill to make up for that. So when you call him, if you have a total of 4 or less cards in your hand and rear guards, you may draw a card. Or no, you have to draw a card, it's not a you may. So that's good, because like if you're behind, or like if you went super ham and then like you're low on hand and then your opponent traded away your stuff, you can still call him down and kind of trade that to get another card and potentially combo off of that, or, you know, find other pieces. Not really combo off, it's more like you're just finding pieces to keep going. But then his other skill is, when you would counterblast, you may retire him and countercharge once. So an immediate countercharger. I wish Dimension Police had this, because this would be absolutely perfect. So really cool card. I like his new art as well. I feel like the foiling of the card really brings it out as well. So super nice card, very good looking, and overall just a very good addition to Novas. Then we got Incise Riser. So risers aren't done just yet, and this one is very pretty. So Vanguard Circle, when it attacks, you may counterblast 1 and stand all the rear guards on your additional rear guard circles. So basically stand all of your axle circles. It's nice. I think for the time being this will be our backup grade 3, because, you know, if you've ridden Azure Dragon twice and then you ride him after that, this is going to be a counterblast 1 to restand 3. Even the counterblast 1 to restand 2 on axle circles is quite good, and I think it's definitely going to promote a very aggressive play. So I think at like 3 copies this dude is looking pretty good. Only thing is, again, doesn't add actual power, so that's why, I mean, it does specifically say, you know, stand the axle circles, which already have some bonus power to them. So love the art. The skill is quite good as well. It's a little bit, you know, it's just one skill, but it does what it needs, so I think for the time being it's going to be okay. Next we have the very iconic Brutal Jack. Vanguard and Rearguard Circle skill, during your turn he gets plus 10k, so he's going to be a 19k attacker, very nice. Then Rearguard Circle, this unit cannot stand during the stand phase, so if you left him there, if your opponent didn't kill him, which they probably won't, he will stay resting. But in order to counteract that, you may once per turn rest 2 of your other rear guards and stand this unit. So that's the part that kind of works around it. It's an act skill, so it's kind of like if you called him off the Azure Dragon and you still want to attack with him, then I guess you can just like rest 2 to stand him. But other than that, like, you're going to be resting 2 just to stand him otherwise. And I think it's nice because you can just rest some of your weaker stuff, like your weaker lines that don't do much, and so it kind of works all right with stuff like Incise Riser. I kind of want to say, just because then it's like you have a bunch of your weak stuff in the main circles, but then your axle circles are just stuff like Brutal Jack and whatnot that are hitting for huge numbers. So he helps us hit for big numbers, he helps us push, and so I think he's very important. He's definitely going to be a 4 of for quite some time, and I mean, he's always been an important card, but I mean, not always, but at the start he was, but right now I think he's definitely going to be very important for Novas for the time being. Then we got an interesting card in Meganton Power Dawn. When this unit in rest is retired from a rearguard circle, return a hero from your drop zone to your hand. It's a hard once per turn. So it doesn't necessarily do anything in terms of like offensively, but it's only like if he's retired while resting, then you can bounce something. So it's kind of okay for that. He kind of like pseudo pluses or like breaks even, I guess. But apart from that, like, we're getting a much nicer hero in grade 2 next set, so that's going to be much better for this kind of like defensive play, and it's also going to be doing something on offense. I feel like this guy, just a defensive skill on a grade 3 especially, is just not enough. Like, he should have had some kind of offensive skill on top of that. And then our other bestiary is Black Tortoise, another very iconic unit. So act once per turn, rearguard circle, you make an almost 1 soul plus 1 to stand him and attack your opponent's Vanguard with it. If the attack didn't hit at the end of that battle, stand this unit. So Again, this is now a main phase attack. So we had right phase attack, now main phase attack, which is literally like dominate. And so it's quite interesting because if it doesn't hit, you can stand him. Only a 9k though, so like you do need to call him in an Exo Circle for this to do anything. This card will be cut with the next set, but for the time being, I think it's okay to be played just because it is an extra attack. But we become pretty counterblast heavy with this guy, so I'm kind of having second thoughts. I think like it's also not just counterblast heavy, but also soul blast heavy. So that's something to keep in mind. I think we're going to be soul blasting a lot. There's another card we still need to look at that we're definitely going to be using, that soul blast as well, so that's something to keep in mind. But other than that, he's a cool card. You can also like call him from the Azure Dragon, and then even if he hits, you can use his skill to stand him and then still attack, and so that's pretty interesting. And then if you rested him with something like Brutal Jack, you can use his skill to stand him as well, so it's pretty interesting. I think I like him quite a bit. And then I should mention that like you don't have to stand him to attack during the main phase. You can just use a skill even if he's standing to attack in the main phase, but then keep in mind that if it does hit, he's going to stay resting. Next we have Scarlet Bird. When placed on rearguard circle during your main phase, you may Soul Blast 1 to stand all your units. If you stood 2 or more units, and if you have White Tiger, which is our new starter, which I'll show now, is in your soul, then you draw a card. Very good card. It doesn't require us to Soul Blast the White Tiger, so we can use them multiple times. And so Soul Blast 1 to stand everything is very cool. You can use Brutal Jack to make sure that he's still standing to do all this stuff. Even if you're stuff with a Azure Dragon or with a Black Tortoise, like if they do hit and they stay sitting, then you can just stand them back up with a Scarlet Bird and also get yourself an extra card. So it's definitely very good, but we are going to be Soul Blasting a lot, so that's something that needs to be addressed in my opinion. So you shouldn't overlook all of that. So a lot of Soul Blasting, but it's going to good causes. Then we have Refilling Riser, a card that I've seen quite a few lists play in the V-EB06 meta in Japan. When he attacks on Vanguard or rearguard circle, one of your other units gets plus 3k until end of turn. But if that unit is in rest, then it gets plus 5k instead of 3k. So I guess it's like, apart from just like attacking with something and then attacking with him and giving the power to that something that's going to be restanding anyway from like a Azure Dragon or something, I guess another application would be like, calling something off the Azure Dragon and then like attacking with them and then keeping them in rest, and then when you call him, then giving the power. But I guess that's really the same thing. So he's an interesting card. Even the plus 3k is nice because it puts us up to the right number for the Axel and Protect matchups. Otherwise, we'll need the 5k for the actual Force matchups, but other than that, it's quite good. Final card that we're going to take a look at, which is quite prominent in Premium to an extent, and I think it will be a necessary card for Novas for the time being until the next set, which is going to be Screaming and Dancing Announcer Shout. Act. You may arrest this unit. You and your opponent reveal the top card of your decks. If their grades are different, the fighter with the highest grade draws a card, and the fighter who revealed the lowest grade soul charges 1. So they soul charge the unit, like you either draw the unit that you revealed or you soul charge the unit that you revealed. Then, if the grades are the same, you and your opponent draw a card. So it says in brackets, draw the revealed cards. I think he's, like, at first when I saw him, I was like, what is this joke? I was like, what is this stupid card? I was like, what is this, But then I saw him being used in Premium, I was like, okay, I see it. And then now, like looking and testing how much soul you actually need for the new Novas in V-EB06, you do kind of need him to actually kind of pull through, so it is pretty important in that aspect. But the Soul Blast costs do go down significantly with the next set, just because you stop running Black Tortoise, and that's a pretty big soul sinker. So I think like after next set, this card won't be as important in Standard, but for the time being, I think it's actually worth using. Otherwise, you're using Boomerang Thrower, which does go into your grade 1 lineup, into your grade 2 lineup, but I guess it's not that bad either. So Screaming Dancer Now So Shout is pretty nice, and I think, it's still worth at least testing out in that aspect. So definitely worth to take a look at. So that's it for Nova Grapplers, and that's it for this whole set. So it was kind of like, I was reviewing this set while watching like E3 in between, and like going to work and everything. But overall, I think the set is really solid. Like honestly, it's got a lot of fresh support. We have like 2 waves back to back of Kagero and Link Joker and Nova Grappler support here, which is going to be exciting to see. For me, I like all 3 clans, so I don't really mind. I'm personally a Nova player, but seeing all 3 clans being supported is nice because probably they're not getting any more support until next year anyway. So it's okay. I know some people aren't too happy about that, but personally I find it pretty alright. So that's gonna be it for me today. Don't forget to check out all the stuff in the description as always, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.